Hello and welcome to, I think this is episode number 10 of the Throwing Strikes podcast. Just kidding. It's RizzoCast now. I changed the name of it because I wanted to kind of go beyond baseball. But now I'm finding myself coming back to baseball as today's guest. We are joined today by Bridget Mulcahy, who's the founder at Cheap Little Swing, her blog where she writes about baseball, food, style, and travel. She also covers the Sacramento River Cats for a number of publications, including her blog. So, Bridget, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here and talk about, as you mentioned, like a little bit of everything in baseball and what's going on right now. So, yeah, thank you.
So, first and foremost, you tweeted yesterday that you miss Bay Area traffic. First and foremost, what were you thinking when you said that statement?
Well, I've been in Arizona actually. So, funny thing is that I was working and covering spring training this year. And then everything kind of went down very suddenly. And I was in the midst of that while that was happening. And so I ended up staying in Arizona and kind of going back and forth between home here in Northern California for me and Arizona. But the traffic just is not the same like there, even on like busy days and on their like freeways. And so it kind of just made me a little homesick. And so when I came back home here just this past week, I was driving in the Bay Area and I was like, wow, I like kind of miss this like on game days and stuff. But I'm sure in like a week that will change and I'll be upset again over the traffic.
So, in all seriousness, how has your quarantine period been? Have you found yourself being productive, picking up on anything new? So, what's it been like for you?
Yeah, it's been a really like strange time for all of us who are covering, sports and in baseball media. But yeah, I've definitely found different projects to keep myself busy with. And as you mentioned before, I do a little bit of like food and cooking and baking on my blog as well. And so if anyone who's been following my Twitter or my blog, I've been posting a lot more recipes and I've been getting into ice cream making this summer, which
Ooh.
has been a fun hobby for me since it's been, so hot in Arizona and California too.
So, I've noticed that there's so many people that have such a tough time with cooperating without sports. And I'm like that from a baseball aspect. How have you
Mhm.
dealt with it? Especially because I'm sure there's a big void in your schedule too.
Yeah, just because, the River Cats aren't playing and it doesn't look like they're going to. And so that was a huge part of my summer last year and is in 2018 as well. So I've been watching a lot of the old, baseball games. They kind of, those are kind of like faded out. I feel like at first everyone was excited to watch those, but now it's kind of like people just want live sports again. So
Mhm.
I definitely like the old stuff. I've always been really interested in my local teams like the Kings and the Niners and stuff. So I have a lot of old, VHS tapes, a lot of old like baseball DVDs and movies. So it's been cool to kind of dive into those for a bit, but I'm looking forward to some live sports action for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. 60 hours of Derek Jeter is kind of too much. But
I
anyways,
know.
speaking of the void, Major League Baseball and the Players Association have been in constant negotiations, and the whole thing's been a mess. I mean, that's the bottom line. Right when there seems to be a compromise, the entire situation crashes back down. So what do you think about all of it, where they are at the current state?
Yeah, I think it's been a mess really, and I think there's a lot of other hurdles to get over, not even related to what they've been talking about in negotiations. I think COVID in general and the second wave that we're seeing a little bit of now, and the spikes in different states, I think will be a problem, especially because the MLB is not doing the NBA bubble, kind of scenario, and so even looking to travel between cities and regionally even and things like that and dealing with like being in different places and stuff. I think there's just so many health protocols that they have like yet to even discuss. So that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. So usually during baseball season, you're down in Sacramento covering
Yes.
the River Cats, which is the AAA affiliate of the San Francisco Giants down there in the Pacific Coast League.
Yes.
So explain your duties when it comes down to that gig that you have there.
Yeah, so I really loved doing that. I grew up a River Cats fan. Of course, they were affiliated with the A's then, and then they switched over in 2015 to the AAA of the Giants. But yeah, I really loved it. On game days, what I'll usually do is, depending on who they're playing that day, I'll go up to the press box and get all my notes together and figure out what I'm going to say for a little pregame show that I do. So I would either put that on my Twitter, on the Dugout Tales Twitter, or my own blog. And so I would put that up and film a little something. All my, like I said, my notes together for the night, I would come to the media well and get set up there. And I would take pictures with my DSLR camera phone and video so I could provide live in-game coverage, which I did for China Basin Chatter as well. I wrote quite a few articles for them. So, I was covering all the many prospects and the many signings that were happening last year with all the different people that were coming through Sacramento. So it was really fun because it seemed like every night there was someone different in the dugout for the River Cats. So that was cool to cover.
Yeah, just remembering now, I think I did some stuff for China Basin Chatter. It feels like so
Yeah.
long ago. So you've been around a good number of the guys down there in Sacramento,
Yes.
past and present. So out of all the players you've covered, which one stood out as maybe a favorite, maybe quirkiest, best player? So kind of go over your Mount Rushmore of players you've covered.
Yeah. Gosh, there's been so many great ones. Mac Williamson has always been really great with the fans. Trevor Brown as well, who was a catcher there, if people remember him for a long time with the Giants too, of course. Aramis Garcia has been great, and I hope he's doing well in his rehab since he had surgery this past spring. Who else? I'm trying to think of some other great ones. Some other people who just come across and help out the team, like Will Clark was in the dugout a few times last season,
Ooh,
and
that
he's
must have
always
been
a
a
riot.
thrill.
He just has everyone like cracking up. Like I couldn't even like focus because he was just always like saying or doing something funny. But Hunter Pence has rehabbed a lot there, and he always spends time with the fans. So there's quite a few like memorable River Cats for sure who have come through.
It must have been a thrill to be around Will Clark. That was a bad
Yes.
pun. But so yeah, minor league baseball is extremely complicated right now, and there's kind of a struggle with it right now as far as the talks about taking away some of the lower levels, and they're being threatened to be removed. So what
Mhm.
does the minor league baseball experience mean to you personally?
Yeah, it really means a lot to me. And because I've been able to cover and get to know a lot of these guys, I see the personal impact, it has on them and um, just the minor league community in general, Sacramento and other places. I know that Vermont Lake Monsters, which are an affiliate of short season affiliate of the A's, are a threat to be cut. And my brother-in-law is actually from Vermont, and I've gone to a lot of those games, and they're a very, they play on like the UVM college campus area. They're a very small stadium, small community, but that support is just so important, means so much to the businesses of the area. My dad is a small business owner, and I have my own side business myself. So seeing that aspect of it, and just that it will take away, a lot of income and a lot of excitement and enthusiasm for the area really sucks. And then of course the players being able to support their families and get a chance to make it to the show and to live their dream. It's sad to think about there won't be as many to be able to do that.
Absolutely. So Cheap Little Swing, let's talk about your blog for a second. First of
Sure.
all, the name is so interesting. How did you come up with the name?
I actually heard Dwayne Kuiper on the TV one day when this is like years ago. He mentioned it, and yeah, I just like stuck. I was like, that's really catchy, and I really like it. It's really cute and kicky, and kind of like the meaning behind it obviously is you can still get a hit and you can still get something done even with a cheap little swing. So that's kind of like the meaning behind my name.
I love that. So I know you recently wrote a big article on the late great baseball manager Billy Martin. I think he turned 92. It would have been his
Yes, it was his
92nd
birthday
birthday.
last month. Yeah.
So there's such a big shift in the way the managerial position is filled now. I think a lot of people um, think of them as now messengers from the front office. So what are some of the things that you take away or maybe learned from writing the article? Maybe even a favorite Billy story?
Yeah, there's so many. There's so many great books I read. Billy Ball is one, an autobiography by him and Phil Pepe. Also Number One, another autobiography. And then Bill Pennington's book as well, The Flawed Genius, is another one I love. There's so many colorful stories in there, and I'm sure there's so many that have yet to be told or maybe can't be told. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, he was just really an innovator, and he was really like the first of his kind. He set out to be, and I don't ever think there'll be another manager like him ever again. I just don't think that kind of manager and who he was would do well in today's baseball game. But yeah, I mean, he was so fiery, and he really was able to rally the troops and create like a win at all cost mentality for his teams. And they really respected that about him, whether that would be, arguing with the umpire, instigating like on-field brawls, or even fighting with his own players.
Fighting with Reggie Jackson.
Today is actually the anniversary of that infamous fight. So yeah, just things like that. I mean, you don't see that anymore. And you mentioned like messengers, or I like to call them puppet managers. Nowadays that we have. But yeah, he was a great one, and so I just wanted to honor his life and career. And I really do think, stacking up against his peers and others who are in the Hall of Fame from that era, I do believe that he deserves to be in. But there are so many intricacies now in the way that the Hall of Fame is set up, and the voting with the committees, and they're always changing it. It seems it's very confusing, but I hope he does make it there someday.
I do too. Absolutely. I think he deserves to be in. And the Veterans Committee, whoever, like you said, it's a very confusing
Yeah.
process now. So whoever has Billy Martin on the ballot, let's get him in. So speaking of an old school kind of personality like him, do you see yourself as more of like a new school baseball mind, an old school baseball mind? Do you use some of the new school metrics?
I like to see myself as a mix. My grandfather played back in the day, so he taught me a lot about school, style of play, along with all the old school players and managers that I love to this day. But I definitely think from just working in the game now, that's kind of brought the more modern concepts and more of like the analytics and all of that to the forefront. And so I've learned a lot about that. Also from scouting. I scouted in the Arizona Fall League in 2018, and I know a lot of scouts, and I've shadowed them and learned from them. So that's an interesting discussion as well, just because they're figuring out how to navigate that cross between old school style of scouting versus the new wave of just, looking at video and not really going out to the field and looking at those like intangibles as well.
Absolutely. I think that's great. So sports media, it is a male-dominated industry and sometimes very misogynistic kind of feel to it. But I think in terms of baseball, they've been the sport to embrace adaptation in that department, I feel. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've really only had great experiences with all the men I've worked with in baseball, even at the minor league level, which can be quite different from, the majors in terms of how, those men think. And those men, a lot of them have been around the game for so long, so it's hard for some of them to maybe adapt to those new concepts and like more women, covering media. But whether that's scouts or announcers or anyone working at the field, they've always really embraced me being there. And I just love talking baseball with them. I'll do like baseball trivia, we'll talk about like some old school like stuff from back in the day. I try to stump them always and stuff, but it's fun just to be around that and kind of to have that mix there of the old school type of baseball person, and then someone newer who can bring like a fresh perspective to the game as well.
So I wonder if they knew that today was the anniversary of the Reggie Jackson, Billy Martin
I know.
fight.
If there was a River Cats game, what is today? Is today
June
Thursday,
18th,
right? Yeah.
Thursday.
It
Yeah.
would be Thirsty Thursday tonight, and I would probably bring that up as a trivia question.
So if there's, say a 12-year-old girl that's trying to break through the business, what would be a piece of advice that you would give?
I would just say stick with it. Even if you get turned down, as they grow older in high school and in college with like internship opportunities and such, like taking unpaid internships. I've had to do a lot of that, and traveling as well. I've had to make sacrifices going across the country to be able to, cover a team or to take like a different or unique opportunity. But it's because I felt it would set me apart. So I think that's also something big, is to find like your unique voice in the game and not try to like imitate someone else or be someone else, but have your own voice and find your own style, whether that's in writing or if you want to be a reporter or whatever it is, and then just go with that and just stay true to who you are.
Absolutely. So as a result of your work, you mentioned travel. So you were invited to the winter meetings a few years back,
Yes.
which I'm over here not jealous at all. But I digress.
It was in
So,
Las Vegas, no less.
yeah, in Las Vegas. Yeah, that's an added bonus. So you don't just
Yes.
get the baseball part of it, you get the social life of Las Vegas as well. So why were you
Yes.
there, and how awesome was that?
Yeah, so that was the 2018, the year that I was in the Arizona Fall League helping to scout, and I saw this application online for this inaugural first ever conference that they were going to hold, and it was for women in non-traditional baseball roles. So scouting, umpiring, coaching, things of that nature. In front office roles as well. And so I applied for it. I didn't really think anything of it. I thought, I had worked for the Giants briefly, and I had done some other promotional work with like the Diamondbacks and the Rockies. But I thought, I didn't go to scout school. I've, just been doing this here. But I wrote something for the application, and they ended up calling me back and, then telling me basically that I was one of the 60 invited to Las Vegas. So I was so excited, over the moon. And I went there. It was about a 3-day networking conference. So every day they had like a full itinerary for us. They had all these different panels set up, a lot of great mentors and people in the game, GMs, front office executives. Billy Owens from the A's actually was in my group. So he led the scouting and player development group that I was in. And I also got to meet there Alyssa Nacken. She was one of the 60 women. A lot of people don't know that. She was just like me, one of the 60 women there for this program. So that was really cool, like to get to know her. And we bonded obviously over from, like being, from this area and like San Francisco Giants and everything like that. So that was cool.
So I also want to mention, you mentioned this before, but you bake and make ice cream. So
Yes.
I've seen all the photos and of your creations, and it looks absolutely to die for, and something
Thank
straight
you.
out of TLC,
Thank
TLC
you.
show. So how did you learn to bake? Yeah. So how did you learn to bake?
Yeah, so my mom and my grandmother, I call her my nonna. That's Italian for grandmother.
Yes.
Yeah, so are you Italian?
Yep.
Yes, you
Risotto's
are, right?
Italian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a Nona too.
So
They're
it's
great.
on is is it on your dad's side then?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So my mom's side is all Italian, and then my dad is from Dublin, Ireland, actually. But yeah, so my mom and my grandmother, both great cooks and bakers. My mom always made pies growing up, cakes for all of our birthdays and things like that. And then my grandmother taught me great like Italian dessert recipes. There's this great cookie recipe called pasta reale. That's really great. It's made with hazelnuts, as long as, ricotta cheesecake.
Yeah.
That's another one of my favorites I've made this past spring. So yeah, they both really taught me everything I knew growing up. And then as I went into college, I started like baking for friends, boyfriends, things like that. And then I kind of started doing themed like catering events and themed parties, whether that's for the Super Bowl or like I would make, baseball cupcakes for a game or something like that. And so I started doing that from there. And then people, were saying to me, hey, I would like to buy a dozen from you, or something like that. Or can you help out at my birthday party? And so I started selling all of my stuff. So I've been in a few coffee shops in the area. I'm hoping to expand more and more. But right now, like I said, since it's so hot, I have an ice cream maker. So I've been making a lot of like sorbets, from cherry to strawberry, lime, sometimes even with alcohol in them if you want to switch it up and be fun on the weekends. But yeah, there's so many different, flavors and kinds to make. So it's fun.
A couple more years for the alcohol one, and then I'm completely down. But yeah, I've been told my entire childhood, manja, manja. So I
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I know what the
And always
Italian.
getting like a second helping. You can't refuse
Yes,
a second helping, right?
yes, manja, manja. So what are some of? I know you kind of briefly mentioned this, but what are some of your favorite recipes
Mhm.
that you like to make?
Gosh, I really like some great like Italian ones. I love making lasagna,
Mm,
uh, with great bolognese sauce. Yeah, ravioli, like a nice for summer, like a nice angel hair spaghetti pasta with like olive oil and like cherry tomatoes is really nice. I've been growing a little garden as well, so always using like fresh fruits or vegetables is always great too. I've been making a lot of burgers lately, so that's been nice. Lemon chicken is like a goes to, roasted chicken. Usually some kind of meat in there and pasta. One of the
yeah,
two.
pasta all the time. Pasta in my house. Bridget, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Where can we find you, and where can we find your work?
Thank you so much. Yeah, you can find me on my Twitter. My handle is at Bridget Mulcahy, just my first and last name. And then you can also find me at cheaplittleswing.wordpress.com. That's where I post all my articles. I have a special designated area just for the food. And then my homepage will be all my baseball articles as well. And then I'm at Cheap Little Swing on Facebook as well.
Bridget Mulcahy, remember the name, everybody, because she is going places. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, follow the podcast, Spotify, Apple, Anchor. I'm on a couple more. But yeah, appreciate you guys listening and have a great day.